Okay, I have made a discovery, and that is that something I already knew for a long time, and that is that I talk too much. And so when I tried my second video, I ended up with another 15 minutes on the next two. So I realized I'm going to have to make it a lot briefer than that. So what I'm going to do is to go back and start over with the second uh, Beatitude and simply try to stick to my notes. I've got some brief notes and uh, I'll try not to make many comments because I need to get this within 15 minutes. So let's talk about, and I'll just give you some bullet points is really what I'll do. And then I've already given you my notes, and you may find these bullet points in those notes as well, but I just want to kind of get it before you so you'll think about it a little bit. We'll have a little bit more time when we get to the other passages after we finish the Beatitudes. But let me just kind of go through this, if I might. We're looking at the second Beatitude, blessed are those who mourn. And I want to remind you that all of us know what mourning is about. But we need to understand that Jesus, while physical mourning or mourning for those in the physical life, when we lose a loved one or something, while that becomes the metaphor for the reality that Jesus is talking about, it is not he's not talking about physical mourning. He's talking about spiritual mourning, mourning about spiritual things, because we're not where we ought to be, and so we're mourning about the needs around us. That's a spiritual thing. When we're concerned about other people and we see poverty, then we mourn because of that, and we are motivated out of that mourning to do something about that poverty. And I think that's what Jesus is trying to say. Examples that we have in the Old Testament, primary example, would be Moses, uh, who mourned for his people, and Abraham would be another one, probably the clearest one that we could think about, as he mourned for Sodom when he saw what was going on there with Lot and his family. Jesus mourned with this kind of mourning, and we see it probably most clearly when he came into the city of Jerusalem and wept over the city. But certainly, involved in this mourning must be mourning for our own sin, for the needs that we have as well. And so we want to make sure that as we think about this mourning, we think about ourselves as well and the needs that we have, because that's how Jesus is able to transform us, when he causes us to see who we are, see ourselves in the same way that he sees us. The third beatitude is blessed are the gentle. I just want to point out to you that this does not mean weak. It doesn't mean cowardly. Doesn't mean wishy-washy or wimpy. It doesn't mean timid, but rather probably the best metaphor that we can think of to describe this would be the word gentle. This is like Moses was. Moses was one who was gentle, so that he would listen to what God said, and then he would do what God told him to do. And so that's what he wants us to be. He wants us to be teachable. He wants us to be coachable. It's the word, this same Greek word is used to describe the domestication of an animal, like a horse. You know, when you train a horse, it's not breaking a horse. You don't want to break the horse. You want to train the horse and channel the horse so that it becomes obedient, so that it learns, so that it's coachable. And that's what he wants us to understand here. Always surrendered, always coachable, always teachable in him. The reward for meekness, according to what he says, is that they inherit the earth. And again, it would be a violation of the principle that's being taught here if we think, okay, something for me. No, it's not something for us. It's always thinking about other people, always putting their needs first. It's getting back into the will of God, being what God wants us to be. And when we do that, then we begin to think like Him and speak like Him and act like Him and think of others like Him. And that's what's really important. The fourth beatitude is blessed are the hungry, but he's not talking about, again, hunger for physical food. He's talking about hungering for spiritual food, spiritual things, in the same way that we hunger for physical food. And the real thing that he wants us to understand here is that the greatest desire of our heart, if we're going to be kingdom characters, if we're going to have the characteristics of Jesus in our lives, the mindset, the attitude that causes us to be transformed, is for us to understand that what we need, what we can't live without, is the righteousness of God. Paul had struggles with this, and he kept trying to climb that slippery ladder to get to the point where he could say God owed him righteousness, but he finally understood on the road to Damascus that that doesn't happen, that it only comes from God. And that's what we have to understand, so that we are able to put to death sin and self and gain and take up our cross and follow Him, is what He wants us to understand. The reward is they will be filled. That means completely filled. It means to be replete, like you've been to a dinner on the ground or something, and you've eaten all you can hold, and you know that you've eaten everything that you need. And that's that satisfaction that comes when we are so hungry for Him that we are willing to give up all else and follow Him and be obedient to Him. Fifth beatitude is, blessed are the merciful. This is where He begins to look now not at our relationship to God, but at our relationship to others. And that's important. I mean, the relationship with God is absolutely essential. And the relationship with each other can't be right if our relationship with God's not right. But our relationship with God cannot be right if it doesn't result in our relationship with improved relationships with one another. And so, again, he's still talking about the characteristics of God. He's still talking about how He wants us to be. We're to be like Him. We're to look around and see the needs of other people, and we're to be merciful. That's what he's saying. To know the needs around us, to see the needs in the lives of people, and to love them so much that we're even willing to forgive them, even when it costs us something, even when it is costly, even when it is unlimited. That unlimited forgiveness that we need to pour out on Him. The reward for this is you can't receive if you don't give. And when we come to that understanding, then we are more willing to be like Him, as we are willing to give of ourselves so that the needs of others may be met. So, what will we do about that? The next beatitude, the sixth beatitude, is the pure in heart. Now, and again, really the main thing I would say about this is this speaks of two things that are important. Were important to Jews and are important to us as well. One is cleanness. For Jews, it was a ceremonial cleanness. For Jesus, what He was seeking to teach us is that it's more than the outward, it's an inner cleanness. And the other word that I really think helps us to understand that is the word simple, to be simple in our approach to life, and to have that single focus, unmixed lives is what he's talking about. And that is what is so important for us. The right attitude toward the King, which results in a right attitude toward other people. The reward for this is to see God. That's what he is pointing out to us here, is the reward is to see God. It's more than the physical. We're going one day to stand in His presence. We have no idea what that's going to be like. But when we stand in his presence, then all will be fulfilled. But what he's trying to tell us is that we can experience that even now, because that's what abundant life is. That's what that abundance is knowing that we have that relationship with him and that we can walk with him, we can understand him, we can have insight into his life, and then we can, in obedience to him, because of the transformation that's taken place in us, we can then begin to live that way for him. And then the seventh beatitude is, blessed are the peacemakers. And this is what he wants us to be. Now, he is not saying that it is blessed are those who are at peace. That's important. It certainly is important. But it is those who are at peace with God who then begin to make peace between themselves and God on a continuing basis, but also between themselves and other people and between other individuals who live around us. God is the one who gives the peace. He is the source of peace, and we need to understand that. But then we need to have peace with God. We need to have peace with ourselves, and then we need to have peace with others, and then we need to make peace. That's the maturity. That's the growth. Not just loving peace, not just desiring peace, but making peace, actively seeking to make peace a reality day by day. And then he says the reward is they'll be called sons of God. I'm not sure we understand exactly what that means, but here's what I would suggest to you. If we think of it from a first century perspective, when they looked at the Father and they looked at the Son, they could see that the Son carries the characteristics of the Father. And that's the metaphor that we need to hear and understand, because that's what God wants us to be. That's what Jesus provided for in our lives. That's what the world needs to see in us, that we carry the characteristics of the Father, and that we fulfill those characteristics day by day in our lives, doing his work, carrying out what he wants us to do. And then the eighth, and I think the last, because I think the next blessed explains this one, and it has to do with persecution. Persecution comes. There's a very simple reason for that. It's hard sometimes for us to understand why persecution comes, but it's very simple for us to think about. Because when we seek to carry out the characteristics of the Father, that is contrary to the world. You want to know why folks are having such a hard time with Christians today? You want to know why Christians are being persecuted so much, not only in other places around the world, but even now, where there's that continual attitude. You can just listen to some folks talk about Christians. You know why they do it with such an expression on their face and such an expression in their heart? Because what they see in the lives of those who are really following Christ is contrary to what they experience in their own lives. And they don't like that. They don't understand that. And they don't like it. And that's why persecution comes. And it comes all around us. Jesus experienced it, and he said, I've been persecuted, and you will be too. People are going to persecute you. That's just the way it's going to happen. So he warned his disciples. You can think about people down through history and understand that that's the case. People like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. We need to think about people like that. We need to read about people like that and understand that we are going to face that same kind of persecution. So we need to ask ourselves the question, as we look at all of these Beatitudes, what are my characteristics? Has there been that transformation that makes a difference in my life? And am I living these characteristics of the kingdom day by day?